Hey guys, it's Erica Parker and I am your Queen of Real Estate with eXp Realty. I did a wholesaling in Texas if it was legal, and I got a lot of comments on it, but one of the really big ones that a lot of investors wanted to understand is how to fill out and what the TREC contract means. So I'm going to walk you through the TREC contract today, and hopefully you find this helpful. Okay guys, so I'm going to show y'all how to fill out the TREC contract today and explain some of the terms and conditions that are in there. So first you will go to Google and type in TREC 1 to 4. That's just the easier one. So you're looking for the 1 to 4 family residential contract resale TREC. So that's the one. It should be the first one that pops up. Now, this is the one that the Texas Real Estate Commission has put together with attorneys, and this is the one I recommend you use whether you are a realtor or an investor, especially if you're an investor making offers on the MLS. So you click here, you'll see that you can download the form, and then it will give you the fillable form right here. So what I would do is go ahead and download that. So I've done this before. Say save. Okay, so when you pull this up, then you want to start filling it out. So the first thing is going to be the parties. So the seller, we'll say, is Jane Smith, and the buyer is yourself. So in my case, my investor LLC is Hestia Home Buyers LLC. So I'll put that there. Now the next thing is the property description. So the way you will find your property description is going to the your county appraisal district. So in Houston, it's the HCAD. So let's pick, actually I can show you a property that I have in Jefferson County. So county appraisal district. So go here, oops, property search, and this is a property that I have. So Hestia Home Buyers. So you will also see right here is the legal description, lot 11, block 13, Lakeview. So that's what you would put in here, lot 11, block 13, Lakeview, City of Port Arthur, County of Jefferson, and then the address. All right, so that's what you put there. Now, this talks about improvements. So if you've made any improvements to the property, or if they put any fixtures in, any basically drapes or any attic fans, ceiling fans, they cannot remove them. That is part of the property because they're considered fixtures. So that's what that means on the improvement side. The accessories, that's going to be the same thing with curtain rods and everything. They should not be taking those down. Pool equipment should be included, all along those mailbox keys, all along those lines. If there is a specific exclusion that they want to take, they have a chandelier that they love that's for a family heirloom or something, this is where you'd put it there. So chandelier in dining room is an exclusion. Here is where you would actually put the sales price. So if you're an investor, then you're going to say an all cash offer likely. Even if you're using a hard money lender, you're not using third-party financing because they're loaning against the asset. And so you're going to put it as an all cash offer. If you are a seller or a buyer, and you want to make an offer, you're going to be putting in the down payment here, the third-party financing here, and then the final. So in this investor side, we'll say that you're buying a house for $200,000, and you would put $200,000 here. And again, even if you're using hard money lending, we would not put that in this particular spot, because that third-party financing addendum is not used for that sense. This next step has to do with leasing. Because you're not actually doing anything with leases, you're buying it and everything, then you really don't need it, unless there is the seller is selling something that they're just not occupying and they already have an existing lease on it, or if they have mineral leased out. So that's the natural resources lease. So it's not very frequently used, but if you do have a seller that's just a non-owner occupied seller that is just tired of dealing with their tenant or something, then there might be a residential lease there. So that would be something that you would check. Now the next one would be you would be putting the title company. So this is where the earnest money and the option fee go. So the title company here, I'm going to use Capital Title of Texas. They do a lot of my deals, so that would be a great one to use. And then you would put their address here. We'll just say 123 Banana Street. And it didn't drop down, so we'll put street on this one. Street, Houston, Texas 77007. So we've got the full thing. So then in earnest money, it just kind of depends. If you're doing something there is no specific amount that you have to pay, but if you're doing something that's on the MLS, typically the realtors want to see at least a 1% a 1% earnest money down. So if you have a $200,000 house, that would be $2,000 here. But if you're dealing directly with a seller, most of the time you could probably just even put $10 or $100, but you want to put something to show you're putting some sort of consideration down. So that we'll go ahead and just put $200 here. That's actually 0.1%. And then here in the option fee, a lot of investors typically will put $10 because they're going to have an option period of when, especially if you're a wholesaler, that you're going to be trying to sell it to someone else. So you can put $10. Typically on the MLS, it's going to be anywhere from, here in Texas, it's going to be anywhere from 100 to 500, depending on how serious you want them to consider you and how long the option period you're going to be asking for is. So here we'll put $10. So the seller, this is if you plan to deliver additional earnest money after a certain amount of days after the contract. Usually it has to do with once you've gotten the title policy, but ultimately I would say most of the time you're not going to be using this. And that just shows if you're more serious and all of that. So here's the termination option. So this is something that's very specific to Texas. Now, what Texas will do is they provide you an option period. So for $10 and however many days you put in here, you can back out of that contract for any reason. It is not strictly an inspection contingency, which is where most other states have in their contracts is an inspection contingency. This is a straight flat option period. So you can back out for any or no reason at all. So here you want to make it as long as you can as an investor. If you are a retail seller, you want to try and make it as short as you can. If you're a retail buyer, you want it as long as you can as well, but be reasonable there. So typically right now, if you are a retail buyer, it's going to be anywhere from 5 to 10 days. If you are an investor or wholesaler, you're probably going to get maybe away with 14 days. Maybe if you can convince them, maybe 30, but we're going to put 14 there. The policy, the title policy. So if you're this is something that is typically the seller has paid in the past, but if you are competing against a lot of offers as a buyer, you may offer to pay for this. And it has to do with the purchase price amount, and you can find out how much you would owe if you go to title insurance calculator, and you can figure out how much that would end up being depending on the price of your home. Now, as an investor, most of the people that are selling are going to be distressed and not have a whole lot of money. So typically you're the one that's going to be paying that as the investor. And we'll put capital title of Texas here again. And so that's it. If you offer to pay all the buyers or all the sellers' closing costs, that's going to be one of the things that's included there. And then here, this is typically, you can say if it's going to be amended or not. This has to do with the survey and if there's shortages and stuff. So you can say no, it's not going to be typically amended, or it's not going to be amended. Or you can say, again, here's where the buyer would be the one to pay for any changes. So you click that. Having problems, it's not showing up now. But yeah, you would click right there. The title commitment, this talks about the title company bringing, usually it happens within about a week. They'll provide you with a list of the title and if there's any exceptions that need to be made that they can't cover, and if there's any outstanding issues with it. So that's usually provided within about a week, but you can have, it can take longer. So it does say 20 days here. Now, the survey must be provided by the seller. If they're not, then again, this is where you can say it's at seller's or buyer's expense. Here in Texas, it probably costs about $700 to $1,000 to get a survey done. So this would be, if the seller has it, you need to get that while y'all are trying to fill this out. So you would know that one way or another, but you can say within 1 day, or typically in a retail buyer situation, you probably give 5 to 7 days here. Here is where if you plan on using it for residential activity, then you would put residential here. And or if you're planning on doing a buy and hold, knowing or you wanted to you were thinking about subdividing it, some HOAs do not allow you to lease for short periods of time if you're thinking of Airbnb-ing it. So it's important to know exactly what you need to put here. So if you want to put, if this is a potential Airbnb and you want to make sure that that's allowed, then you can put that there. And then that is, so this is to determine if you actually have the ability to do that, and then you could back out if you don't, if you find out you don't. So and then we'll say 7 days within receiving the title commitment, exception documents, and survey. So this all has to do with if you have an objection to what's going on in the title, or if it keeps you from being able to do what you intended with the property. So membership in a property owners association. So this has to do with they call it a property owners association now, but it is basically your HOA. So if the property is or is not within an HOA, and a mandatory membership to that. So you can say is or is not. The things I've been dealing with mostly have been not, but it's very frequent to have it within an HOA. Now, the additional things that you would need, this has to do with statutory, the water code and tide waters, if you're going to be within a certain sea level of the sea. And so that's important for you to read through these things that have to do with all the flooding and all of that. And transfer fees, that has to do with There are some transfer fees usually with a property owners association, but these have to do with private transfer fees that have to do with developers, because sometimes developers can put a transfer fee on the deal as well. So that's something to identify, and that the title company should identify for you. The next thing that you're going to want your seller to do is provide you with a seller's disclosure notice. So they have received it, or that you receive it within a certain amount of days. So tell them to be very honest and disclose everything, because that's the biggest thing, is they don't want to get in trouble for fraud either. So it's better for them to over disclose than to under disclose to you, so that you know exactly what's going on in the home. You can accept the property as is. Most investors are, because they've built in the repairs that they plan to do to the property. However, in a retail setting, you can say as is, or if you already know something needs to be fixed, or they've told you they're going to fix something, that's usually when you put in these repairs and treatments here. If you are retail, you are going to likely have an inspection done. If something comes up in the inspection that you want repaired, then you can offer to an amendment that allows for these additional repairs. And there's an amendment addendum as well that allows you to make those changes. And in that, just understand that that has to be done during your option period, because most of the time, if you're trying to negotiate that after the fact, the seller's likely not going to do that. So the lender can sometimes request repairs. That usually has to do with an FHA loan. So that's going to be more on the traditional side and the traditional lending side, not the hard money lending side. Completion of repairs and treatments, if there's certain proof that needs to be provided and everything along those lines. Environmental matters. Now here, the residential service contracts, that has to do with home warranties. So on the investor side, you're not going to do a home warranty. You're not going to ask for a home warranty unless you are planning to really kind of buy this as there are no repairs and you're just buying and holding it and renting it out. So you're really not going to likely ask for a home warranty. Again, you're buying from distressed sellers. They can't really pay anything. So this is important for you to understand, though, so this is something you likely will not touch. As a retail buyer, you can ask for this. It's very uncommon right now because of how crazy the market is, but it is something usually on a $300,000 to $400,000 house, you're going to probably pay around $650 for a home warranty for a year. So that's where you would put that if you want the seller to reimburse you for that. This is if you are a broker or sales agent. I have to fill this out. This is not something you have to fill out as a wholesaler, so you are good there. Now, or if you're just trying to sell a property by yourself, you don't need to fill that out. The closing date, this is where you put what you want to close on. So if you want a 14-day close or 21-day close, that's when you would put this here. So we'll just put in, today is November 5th, so we'll say a 30-day close. So December 5th, 2021. And so that helps with all of that. Now, this talks about when the buyer actually is planning to take possession. That would be upon closing and funding. Most of the time, there can be a residential lease or a temporary lease back. That is atypical for most of the transactions that an investor is doing, because they want them out of the house so they can do the updates and everything that they need to do. They're on a time slot, but sometimes it's something that you might consider if someone is worried about finding another home. Then you can always do like a lease back for a month or something like that if that works for you and it works into your holding costs. And it's something to consider if you're trying to beat out someone else. Then here is special provisions. I recommend in special provisions that you will say the property shall be empty of all belongings and broom swept clean. That is something that is very rarely done by sellers unless you put it in there, but it's very rarely done unless it's very specifically said that, hey, you're going to get everything out and it's going to be broom swept clean. Now, if they don't want to move everything, if this is a hoarder house or something like that, then you can say there's a non-realty items section or addendum that you can always fill out that that has that, or that you could put all belongings left on the property after closing shall be the property of the buyer. And so then you don't have anyone that's coming back trying to claim that they never vacated the premises. And one more thing about special provisions. So we talked about it being broom swept clean. The other thing that you would write here is buyer will pay all closing costs. So this is a common thing for the investor to do, and that's where you would put that in there, so that it's a very straightforward comment to the title company that all the closing costs need to go to you. Now, the seller shall also pay this amount towards closing costs. This is done on a retail side. This is not frequently done on an investment side, but on the retail side, usually FHA and VA loans don't have a whole lot of money being put down, and the people that are buying the house don't necessarily have a whole lot of money that way. So they may ask for some contribution from the seller back to closing costs. At the top of each of these pages, there's the address of the property. You want to put that in there, but I'm skipping over that. Casualty loss has to do with if there's a hurricane or a tornado or a fire or anything like that, and it burns down, then during the time of the contract, then the seller shall return it to the same condition it was in, or it will allow you to terminate the contract and be refunded. All the money that the buyer has put down on the earnest money can be refunded. So that is certain things that you can do with casualty loss. There's a mediation portion if you want to mediate the contract, attorney's fees, who will pay those. Escrow has to do with the person that gets the earnest money. They have to put it into escrow. There will be a fee for that at closing. And it's important to have earnest money down, because that's part of the making the contract, there being a consideration paid, and that makes the contract valid. So make sure you do have earnest money, but it doesn't have to be a huge amount like I mentioned before. So these all have to do with how the damages would be handled, expenses that are going to be paid and how they're going to be split, and all of those along those lines. So, and how the escrow agent should handle anything during that time. This talks about representations and warranties. So anything that the seller's representing, that's something if they default on that, then that could nil the contract. So that's another thing. Notices, sometimes it's filled out, sometimes this isn't. This is just the seller and buyer information if you want that. The frequent addendums that you're probably going to have are, because you're not third-party financing as a investor, you don't need that. Seller financing, that's if you decide to try and do something subject to, then you would fill out this seller financing addendum. Addendum for the property being part of the property owners association, that's another addendum that you might end up using. And then over here, there are a lot of the properties that we're looking at here in Texas, at least, that are flipped and stuff, especially in a lot of Houston. There's quite a few that are going to be built before 1978, so there is a lead-based paint disclosure. Again, if you're just doing this with your seller and it's not something that's needed, it's not something for the MLS, then you may not need this one, but you will need if you're doing subject to the seller financing, and you will want to do the property owners association, because you want to know, this will talk about getting the certificate to determine if the person's behind on their HOA fees too. So it's important for you to get that access. This is usually not filled out as well. This has to do with if you have an attorney that's representing you. And then finally you get to the signing. This second to last page has to do if there is a realtor on the deal, then that's what gets filled out there. A lot of times the realtor if there is no realtor, then this doesn't get touched, but you can put seller and buyer as an intermediary, or if they're just representing the seller, then you put that there. So, and then finally, the last page has to do with the option, earnest money, contract, receipt. So this is filled out by the title company. Previously, in previous years, the option fee went directly to the seller, but more recently it's going to title, and title is holding on to it in the escrow as well. So they'll sign off on receiving it. That's why you see escrow agent now here, and then earnest money as well, and escrow agent there. So they're going to sign off on the receipt of all three of these once you've sent it in. So guys, I hope you found this information helpful. If so, please like it below, drop a comment, and really, I just want other people in the algorithm for YouTube to see it if it is that helpful for you. So thank you guys, and if you do want more information about this, please go ahead and hit that subscribe button and click that little bell, and I'll make more videos for you. I'll talk to you soon. Bye for now.